What is the biggest Dragon Ball fan theory? I'm going to break that down in depth after this. Hey guys, before I begin, I just wanted to let you know that LSM now has memberships. If you want to join and support this channel, you could do so by going to my channel, clicking join, and joining at one of the 3 tiers, getting access to the emojis, the badges, the Discord server, exclusive content, and that much more as you go up with the different tiers, and help us to go even further beyond here at the channel. With that being said, let's get directly into the video so we could take a closer look at this and find out. Okay guys, so over on my channel recently, I asked everybody a question, which is, what is your biggest Dragon Ball fan theory? So basically, throughout the course of this fandom and over the course of the time that this franchise has existed, we have seen time after time fans coming up with different theories, some of them being more legitimate and more likely to exist within the narrative than others. And so I'm going to be breaking them down in depth and deciding what is the biggest and most likely out of all of these. And also, well, with that being said, let's get right into the video. Okay, now before I get into the community tab theories, I want to actually get into the member theories that I have over here on the Discord that you would be able to join if you became a member of the tier 2 or higher. And let's get into some of their theories. Where, of course, I will actually get into biggies later in the video. Theory from another member here, which is that the first Cooler movie is actually in continuity with Super, taking place during the 3 years of training. The reason it's never been mentioned is that Frieza's glad he's gone, and so on and so forth. Meanwhile, Easy Fight for Goku was that cheap measuring stick. He didn't get checked the way to Cell, Boo, and so on, in that he believes that the second movie is not canon. I don't really agree with this theory. I think that there is enough kind of evidence in the story that doesn't really fit into the narrative, because, you know, Goku should be able to transform into a Super Saiyan right away, you know, at will, because when he comes back from Yard Dry, he can do it whenever he wants, and it wouldn't really make any sense for him to not do that up until he's really on the verge of death, basically, you know, cool, and then he easily is beating Cooler. He's not just doing it for a fun fight, you know, he wouldn't be using Kaioken, he would just go Super Saiyan, stuff like that. Gohan looks like, you know, he did even before the 3 years of training. So I think it's just that it doesn't really line up with the continuity of the story in any of the versions. And it's kind of something that we can't fit in there like pretty much all the other movies. You could say BoJack and things like that too, but even then there are little issues with BoJack, like him and King Kai still being like, you know, waiting around in the afterlife and building a house and things like that that don't happen in the original anime or even the especially not in the manga. BoJack Unbound and Wrath of the Dragon happen in the anime in the timeline. Again, like I said, there are little things that don't necessarily line up, but you could try and make that argument here. A lot of people are commenting on each other's things. Okay, so to summarize this next theory, basically the idea is that in the future, in the original timeline, Goku spared King Cold's life because he realized that King Cold was not Frieza, but rather a different person, so he thought, okay, I'll give the guy a chance. And because of that, basically King Cold went to Namek, the new Namek, in order to try and use their Dragon Balls to gain immortality. However, he in turn was not granted the ability to use them by the Namekians, and so he just blew up the planet and killed everyone instead, basically. And then at that point, King Kai found out about this, told Goku, and told him that it's all Goku's fault, that the Namekians were gone now because they couldn't be wished back again by the Earth Dragon Balls after what we saw happen on Namek. And then, as a result, it was basically Goku's fault that this entire race no longer existed. And so he refused to ever help or talk to Goku again, which is what led into, after Goku dies and then all the Z fighters die, King Kai choosing not to help Goku and the Earth. However, in this case, he also is saying that the main reason that the other fighters who were students under King Kai didn't go to see him is because of the fact that they were not his students. Plus, they couldn't be wished back anyway with the death of Piccolo, for instance. And so, as a result, they kind of just watched and had to see everyone dying and everything as a result of Goku's actions sparing King Cold, leading to the destruction of basically everything in the future. Now, with that being said, I'm not entirely sure I really agree with this. First off, there is still the idea of, you know, the one-day visits, if what you're saying did happen. So theoretically, King Yema, fortune teller Baba, if she wasn't killed, you know, they could have had people come back for one-day visits, even without the involvement of King Kai. And after years of training, they would have been more than adequately strong enough. They wouldn't have been able to be wished back. But, you know, the thing is that King Yema made an exception to try and stop, well, Boo. And so I have a feeling that he probably would also try and make the exception in this case because, well, these two beings on the Earth, the androids, killed the most powerful fighters in the universe, and eventually they were going to run out of humans. So King Yema was seeing the entire human race going there, for instance. And thus, as a result, well, they could have likely been a situation where he would have been like, okay, they could leave the Earth and kill everyone on all the other planets because they're basically like, you know, unstoppable killing machines, Jinzo Ningen, as Black and Fist would say. And so as a result, yeah, let's put a stop to this right now. Goku, get him! And yeah, you would kind of see everything unfold there. Plus, I feel like if Goku found out that the guy he let loose, King Cold, went and wiped out Namek, which he did his best to save, I feel like he probably would have gone after King Cold and killed him then and there. So the fact that we didn't really like hear about that, I feel like Goku would kind of pull Vegeta and jump into a spaceship and go flying after the enemy. So overall, interesting theory, maybe even one I'll use for the thumbnail because the fact that, well, King Cold tends to do well on here. But with that being said, I don't really agree with it entirely. And then we have some interesting theories here about, for example, that Panchi wasn't originally designed or intended to be Bulma's biological mother because she seems so much younger in terms of her looks and everything else along those lines, and that maybe Dr. Brief married her as like a trophy wife and Bulma was bitter about everything with the result of that, leading to her going searching for the Dragon Balls. The second one is that, well, maybe she was actually an android, which is something I've heard a bunch of times over the years, where people have speculated that Dr. Brief's wife is an android, and that maybe she was created by Dr. Gero on my channel, or Dr. Wheelo. And yeah, I'm not too sure I ever would agree with that idea. I think that she's just supposed to look the way she is because I always kind of got the impression she was inspired by someone like Marilyn Monroe, you know, a type of 50s Hollywood starlet. So she just kind of maintains that look, even though her husband is older. Plus, you know, I mean, who knows how old she was when she had Bulma. Also, theory number 3 about the panties that Oolong wished for, and basically he's making kind of like a joke saying that it came from a character from Dr. Slump. So if you guys want to pause and read these theories and see what you have to say about that, or if you join, you could read them and interact with them and kind of discuss in depth what you think. But let's get into the community tab. So we'll start with the top one right here, which is the idea of where future Trunks that comes back to help fight 17 and 18 is actually a separate future Trunks, and the original future Trunks we saw for the first time who killed Frieza was eventually killed off himself by Cell. Now, I actually explored this in a video on my channel recently, you guys can see in the top right corner, where I discussed where future Trunks went for the 3-year time skip. I brought up that whole long-running theory in the fandom. It's definitely one that is really interesting, but whether or not it really has a lot of credibility and credence, I'm not so sure. I think within the narrative and everything, we are supposed to believe that the future Trunks who was 3 years ago is the same one who shows up 3 years later, and in fact is the same one who also is in Dragon Ball Super, despite the change in depiction, such as the blue hair and so on and so forth. So I definitely think this is an interesting concept, which I explained that much more in depth in that video. But the idea of him being a different one and him and nobody else even knowing it and it fitting into the ideas of the arc, it kind of works in that sense, but narratively and also in universe, not quite so sure. It is interesting to think, though, that every single character we see from Cell onward is a variant, and all the original ones are actually dead. So I even broke down the video you guys can see in the top right as well, what happened in the original timeline. So definitely check that one out. Next one, Zeno isn't the original Zeno, he's an offspring. That's why he's a baby, doesn't seem to understand universes he supposedly created, has guards, grand priests, and everybody rein him in, and that the original god hit the end of his lifespan and reincarnated like King Piccolo. Now, I actually also did another video years ago that you guys can also see in the cards, the description, and on my channel if you can't find those on your device, which is Zeno the real Omni King? Or is Zeno really the Omni King? I don't remember at this point what it's called. You guys will know when you see it. But the truth is that I actually kind of jive a little bit with this idea. I never thought of the idea of him being reincarnated like King Piccolo into Piccolo Jr., but I do think that there is a interesting case to be made that perhaps Zeno, based upon all the information we've seen of him, isn't the true creator god. He isn't the monotheistic god in a sense, that there is some higher being above him or the one who created him, and maybe even Zalama, the dragon god, because the Super Dragon Balls are capable of even restoring the universes that Zeno had erased, and so on and so forth. So the fact that there are multiple Zenos, and each timeline has a multiverse which Zeno is duplicated in too, despite the fact that he should be, well, God with a big G that transcends all of existence, especially considering that he lives outside of the universes, kind of is a little bit telling in that sense as well. Maybe there isn't a top god in Dragon Ball, but there tends to always be higher gods that Toriyama would introduce in the past, and maybe Toyotaro or somebody will introduce in the future, so definitely a possibility. The Red Ribbon Army has always been the mastermind behind every catastrophic event that has happened from the original Dragon Ball all the way until DB Super till this point. Well, I mean, you know, a lot of that would be them having to work behind the scenes, let's say. But in terms of them being the mastermind behind every catastrophic event, I mean, I wouldn't say that they're the masterminds of, like, you know, events that involve, let's say, Pilaf, or that involve things like, you know, for instance, the Black Star Dragon Balls for counting GT destroying the Earth, or Boo, and really anything to do with him. I mean, in terms of the original manga continuity, the most that Dr. Gero knew went up until Namek, and he didn't actually activate his plan until after, you know, a year or 3, depending upon your timeline perspective in the Future Trunks different variants, when he actually put into playing the androids and everything like that. I mean, he was working on these things and studying Goku for a very long time after they defeated his, well, army that he was trying to manipulate in order to get his own will. So I don't know if that would say that that necessarily has credence, but it is interesting, especially when we incorporate Dragon Ball Super Superhero in that continuity, and the fact that the Red Ribbon Army or the Red Ribbon Pharmaceutical Company knew all about this stuff. So, you know, that is interesting to think that maybe they played a part in some of these things. Gohan was Dr. Gero's inspiration for creating Cell. After seeing the Demi Saiyan's power against Full Saiyans, he decided to create his own hybrid for world domination. Another really interesting idea. It's never really brought up in the narrative, but I do think that it kind of flows well with the themes. I mean, after all, Cell is ultimately defeated by Gohan. Both of them are constantly compared and contrasted against one another by Toriyama during the course of the arc. You know, we see Cell powering up, we see Gohan powering up. Everything builds up narratively and visually, especially if you guys are reading the manga, to that event where the two of them fight. The two of them surpass everybody else, and then ultimately the possible inspiration for Cell in that sense, from what you're saying, is the one to defeat him. The original was better than the copy, especially, you know, what Vegeta said when he was slamming Goku Black into the ground through that building and everything. And then, of course, you know, Goku Black and everybody beat him because, well, that's Vegeta. So that's Vegeta's technique, losing to the main villain, even when he should win. Tails are the key to the complete mastery of all Super Saiyan forms. Now, he does put all in there, so yeah, I mean, the thing is, like, obviously Goku was able to master Super Saiyan, and so were, you know, the other characters that do that without having a tail. As a matter of fact, the idea that Toriyama put forth is that the Saiyan bodies with Goku and Vegeta and so on eventually saw the tail as just being a weakness and then elected not for it to grow back. So there's always this idea in the fandom that the Saiyan tail would make Goku and everybody so much more powerful and would unlock so much more. And, GT kind of put forward that idea a little bit too, where even though Goku was stated to have not gotten any stronger after he got his tail back with the help of the Daikaio, or the Elder Supreme Kai, who basically became the Daikaio Shin, or Grand Supreme Kai, and Kabito Shin and the Sugorokus, the fact of the matter is that, well, we do see that he's able to get Super Saiyan 4 out of that. Maybe you could say that that would be some plot point they could bring up in the future as to how Goku could master Super Saiyan 3. I have a whole video planned about that in the future. But in terms of the manga continuity and most of what we see, there isn't really a lot of evidence to support this idea. So I'll let you guys decide, and let me know your own thoughts down below in the comments about all these different theories I bring up, because, well, there's a lot of them here. Super Saiyan 4 is the real peak, with Ultra Instinct, Ultra Ego, Beast, etc. being a unique trait to each person's version of Super Saiyan 4. So it seems like they're basically trying to say something that I've heard before, where like Dragon Ball Super is giving characters basically Super Saiyan 4, but in terms of that, not the actual form. Like Broly with his Ozaru Ikari power that he uses before he becomes a Super Saiyan. That's almost like his Super Saiyan 4. Goku's Ultra Instinct, Vegeta's Ultra Ego in the manga, Gohan Beast. These are like the Super Saiyan 4. In terms of being the real peak, I mean, that is basically what they say, that Super Saiyan 4 is kind of like an even better version of Super Saiyan 3, where it brings out the Saiyan's full potential and power to its absolute maximum. The thing is, with the other forms, we're never really necessarily told, as far as I know, at least with Ultra Ego, I'm not 100% sure, but with the others, we're never really told that's necessarily the case. There always seems to be something above that. And so, if we're talking about like the timeline, if they somehow shove Super into GT's continuity and everything and make everything somehow fit, like, shoving a square or rectangular piece into a small circular hole, all these circles make a square and everything like that. The fact of the matter is that Super Saiyan 4 will be the real peak in that narrative. But Ultra Instinct and a lot of these other forms, they ultimately end up getting, well, surpassed by new forms or by villains that show up and make them essentially irrelevant. Even the arc that Goku initially got the silver mastered form, the complete Ultra Instinct, he still basically didn't get the job done. So that's also a kind of way that Super differs from the introduction of other forms, at least up until the Buu saga. But even then, I could see them getting new forms if the story continues to go in that direction. So Super Saiyan 4, though, is the real peak in terms of my favorite, and I think the best transformation we've seen on screen, which you guys can also see in that top right corner. Super Saiyan 4 is the true form of Super Saiyan from Legend. This is another interesting one I've seen. Well, it looks like a lot like the Golden Ape in episode 66. And that says that he was destroyed by his own power. Goku and GT, of course, masters the Golden Gray Ape, unlike the original Super Saiyan changes into Super Saiyan 4. Now in GT, it's basically either implied or outright stated the reason why you can become a Golden Gray Ape is because it's somebody who transforms into the Ozaru, who is already a Super Saiyan. You could make the argument that maybe the original Super Saiyan did that, and it was so overwhelming that he destroyed the planet or whatever. A lot of this stuff is from the dub and from the anime, which is never shown or cited in the manga. In the manga, the only time we see Super Saiyan for the first time is when Goku transforms into it. And even then, that changes based upon the adaptation, because Toriyama originally had his hair being white, and then it ended up being golden, moving forward, especially in the anime. So his eyes were also red, and that changed too. So yeah, in terms of it being the true Super Saiyan from Legend or the true ultimate form of Super Saiyan, it might also give a little credence to Supreme Kai from 15 generations ago, saying that that's Super Saiyan 4, knowing immediately what it was. But Yeah, you could make an argument for a lot of people who do that maybe there was a Super Saiyan 4 in the past who also led to the inspiration of Legend, but that wasn't what Toriyama was going for at all. Speed of light is much faster in Dragon Ball than in real life. Not sure if it was filler, but Bulma had a real-time conversation with her dad over radio on Namek, and when a faster-than-light ship took seconds to reach Jupiter, took months to get there. I mean, the thing is that, you know, it's not like it necessarily has to be radio waves that she was communicating with her dad and stuff. And even then, you know, regardless if it's filler or not, the thing is that's really interesting is that oftentimes when it comes to like versus battles and in-universe mechanics, people who discuss this stuff will often be like acting as if it is the exact same in every universe, or that like, you know, oh, these characters are able to do this in this amount of time, which automatically means that they can move at this particular speed. But it's like, that is a really interesting point that you sort of bring up, which is that Dragon Ball's mechanics do not have to actually match one-to-one with ours or any other universe. You know, like an atom in Dragon Ball could be 100 times bigger or smaller, right? Like a pound could be 10 tons in our world, but in Dragon Ball, it's 1 pound, you know? So the speed of light could be faster or slower. We're never told that, like we're never really given a real frame of reference for that to necessarily be the case. But then again, there are a lot of inconsistent speed feats, and, you know, some of the technology doesn't necessarily line up with ours. That's why at the end it's fantasy and science fantasy. It's not really straight up, you know, this is exactly how it would work in our world. Toriyama wasn't a scientist. He wasn't concerned with that. And most fictional writers are not either. So that's an interesting point to make, perhaps. I think if Goku was the only person to fight Cell, he would have managed to use Super Saiyan 2 if he knew he was the only Earth's hope. Yeah, I don't agree with that. I've made videos in the past talking about like why Goku couldn't beat Cell in the top right corner and down below. Goku could not beat Cell. That was what the narrative was showing. That's what the thing was showing. People are like, well, what if Goku went to the time chamber again? What if he did this? What if he did that? It wouldn't have worked. The only one who could have beaten Cell was Gohan, unless they ended up, you know, getting way more training in over the course of years, and Cell kind of just like went into a coma, or, you know, turned into a cicada again, just slept for 4 years or something like that. No one there could have beaten him. You know, maybe if they called Broly up on the phone and he was like, who are you? Oh, you could beat Vegeta if you come here and fight this bug. Okay, I eat bugs for breakfast. I know that Broly doesn't sound like that, but yeah. Either way, Goku could have beaten Cell. That was the whole point. The only mortals Beerus ever feared was Babidi and Bibidi, and out of not knowing what their powers could do, hence he allowed them to wreak havoc on the Kais of Buu. That's why he trapped the Elder Kai in the Z-Sword so Buu couldn't destroy him and keep himself alive. I've actually wanted to do a video for years called Beerus's Horcrux. I don't know, I might change the title if I ever do it, where it was like Beerus is actually really smart, and the reason why he sealed Elder Kai away was that he wanted to protect himself so he could live indefinitely, so that he wouldn't have to worry about the link between him and, you know, the Supreme Kai. But with that being said, even though in the manga, we do see that the sword is destroyed, and so the Elder Supreme Kai dies after Deborah spits on the sword, it's never actually said to us that the connection was between them. It's heavily implied and basically stated that it's between Shin, the younger East Kai, and Beerus. So how that happened, how the link actually initiates, we don't really know, but I think it's an interesting idea, and I've also wanted to talk about what Bibidi and Bobidi's real plan was with Buu, and maybe that's the reason why they were trying to kill the Supreme Kais to wipe out Beerus. But hey, maybe I'll do that video in the future. Pilaf and Garlic Jr. connect as the same race. They have the same ear shape. Yeah, I mean, it's a very similar design that Toei might have taken from, you know, Pilaf, especially in his smaller form. And, you know, I remember that when I was a kid, there were all these BS things that would come out about how, like, oh, you know, Garlic's real last name is Garlic Pilaf, and they're related, and Pilaf was actually his father, you know, kind of like nonsensical things that people would just say as fact back on the school bus and the playground and everything like that. So I could see why people would think that. I don't think so, because even though we're never told what Pilaf really is, you know, it's implied he's from Earth, whereas Garlic Jr. is from the Makio star, which is really like the demon homeworld, like the demon aliens. The original Super Saiyan destroyed Planet Salad in Universe 7. That's something that they've kind of like implied, at least in the anime. You know, there are different things that we're told about like how the original Saiyan homeworld was devastated or destroyed, whether it be because the original Super Saiyan, whether it be because of the civil war that happened there. I believe they say in Dragon Ball Super, something along those lines. So yeah, I mean, it's possible. But we don't really know. I mean, the thing is that it's also made to seem like in Battle of Gods that the Super Saiyans on the original homeworld were, well, usually good, and then that's how they created the Super Saiyan God. But then again, I mean, there's a lot of different questions that kind of go into that overall. So, you know, I'll let you guys say what you think. The higher levels of Super Saiyan beyond 3, each version is a mutated of some levels, seeing as one can be changed. I mean, that's what Toriyama said. He said that in an interview that Super Saiyan 2 and 3 are just basically like upgraded forms of the original Super Saiyan, and that Goku and Vegeta weren't going to really use them anymore. They were going to focus on their base and everything. Of course, that changed immediately because then they get Super Saiyan Blue, and then like they start bringing all the forms back in the Universe 6 and everything moving forward. But that's basically what Toriyama said. Vegeta's technique is the Saiyan equivalent of a temper tantrum. Very true. The Universe 6 Saiyans are hybrid Saiyans with another species. They moved off Planet Vegeta some time ago, don't have tails anymore, have very high potentials and grow quickly, and very few resembling features in Universe 7. I don't think so. I think that's basically they're all a bunch of Goten Trunkses. You know, like at this point, I mean, Goten Trunks are hybrids, yeah, but basically they have all evolved beyond the need for tails, and that, you know, the tailless Saiyans who live in peaceful times because, you know, like Toriyama's idea of S cells, kind of like midi-chlorians of Star Wars, gave them way more potential and power and everything else along those lines. So yeah, I don't really think that that's the case, but you never know. I mean, they could always say something. Maybe the Saiyans and the Tuffles kind of made love, not war. Cell wasn't based only on the cells of Goku, Vegeta, Piccolo, and King Cole, but also Tien, Krillin, Yamcha, Roshi, and so on. Yeah, so, you know, depending upon your version of the story, like the anime or the manga, this is something that you could definitely make an argument in the anime version that he had the cells of like Tien and everyone, because the fact that he uses the multi-form and he uses other abilities that, I mean, Piccolo uses the multiform in the anime, but, you know, the fact of the matter is that he uses techniques that seem to be evocative of other characters too. In the manga, they make it seem like it's pretty much just these characters here. You know, you can argue maybe he might have Gohan cells because we do see him in the flashback. But either way, the fact of the matter is that Toriyama also wrote that said a number of other creatures, I believe, in the description in the manga when he talked about what Cell is comprised of. So you can make an argument. It just seems that in the manga version, it isn't necessarily the case. From storytelling perspective, the reason Vegito couldn't split Zamasu but Trunks could was actually karmic and a full circle story. Having Zeno come in was more so a telling of even when you face your struggles, sometimes completely beyond yourself. Yeah, I mean, I think you're just trying to make the story better than it actually is, because the ending of that arc is, well, bad. I mean, it's interesting, though, but Trunks' power scaling, you know, isn't overcome by themes, right? I mean, as dumb as it is, it would have been better had Zeno not erased the universe immediately afterward, but yeah, I hate that ending. Goku gave the bean to Cell so that Cell wouldn't kill Gohan like an honor code. I mean, I don't know about the honor code. I mean, maybe you could throw that in there, but I talked about in another video in the top right corner why Goku giving Cell a sensu bean isn't that bad. Because it really isn't. It makes sense within Goku's character, within what happens in the story. A lot of people are like, oh, hindsight, hindsight, hindsight. Okay, it doesn't change the fact that that's what happens. So, you know, Goku giving Cell a sensu bean was not that bad. If anything, it wasn't bad at all. And probably when you watch my video, you'll realize, oh yeah, maybe Cell would have actually fought differently and wouldn't have taken all the stuff that he did and wouldn't have played around as much and would have just killed Gohan when he had the chance. You know, like there's a lot of things that imply that could very well be the case. But again, I'll leave the comments for you. Each Super Saiyan form are actually them unlocking their chakras. I've actually heard this before. I believe Plague of Gripes and I discussed this at one point before we talked about my video about how gravity train works in Dragon Ball Super. Well, really the whole Dragon Ball franchise. But, you know, I don't have enough room in the top right corner unless I do. So you can always check that on my channel. It's an interesting concept, and maybe the coloration also kind of aligns with that a little bit based upon certain depictions of chakra and those Eastern beliefs. I wonder if Goku's gonna start using Super Saiyan Jutsu. Goku trolls Vegeta while practicing instant transmission, that filler episode right before the Android saga begins. That was real. I actually have wanted to do a video about this for years. You beat me to it by saying it here in a sense, but I've always been like, what was Vegeta really following? And the last time I watched the Garlic Jr. saga, I was like, wait a second. Maybe Goku was using instant transmission. That's why Vegeta was sensing it. But then Vegeta has no idea that Goku has instant transmission or teleportation until he sees it. So, you know, Dragon Ball gonna be Dragon Ball with the continuity errors. The events of GT take place in one of the universes we haven't seen much of yet, 1, 5, 8, and 12. I love the idea of making it semi-canon. Yeah, I don't really, that's not really how the universes work. There's no universe that's the same as the universes we see. Like there's multiverses through timelines, but you know, in the way that Toriyama introduced universes, the closest thing we have is universe 6 to 7, and it's like a twin universe, but it isn't like an identical twin. So yeah, I mean, you could say it's another timeline or something like that. But even then, the way that they've shown timelines doesn't necessarily work with the GT or the movies. And I also don't really agree with the idea that a lot of fans have that GT and the movies take place in the same universe, because I think that so many people see that one shot like of the Dragon Ball villains flying out of hell in the Super 17 arc, and they're like, see, it proves it. It's like, not really, no, it's just an Easter egg. Like, Easter eggs don't have to actually fit into the continuity and canon of the story. Just like a gag scene doesn't necessarily mean something's actually happening in universe, right? So I don't really buy that, and I also don't think that all the movies take place in one continuity either. I think that they contradict each other as well as the main story. So, you know, it's up to you. Choose your own canon, basically, at this point in the franchise. Android 16 still alive, was wished back with everybody who's killed by Cell. Same as Ader, and he's a machine, but developed a human soul over time. 16 is out there. Maybe Gohan even knows this and wants him to live in peace with nature. I don't think Gohan knows or even cares at this point. He, maybe remembers him. But yeah, I don't think so. I feel like they would have brought him up by now if he actually did come back. I think that he just stayed dead because it had more of an impact on the narrative. But I've talked about that in a video with Harold von Hugenmuscles, after all, my original collaboration partner. Okay, you wouldn't call it a theory, but you came to appreciate Toriyama actually having planned the series out narratively. I might discuss this in a video in the future, the idea that Toriyama put way more planning and has way better memory than people thought he did, and he kind of played it down. Hey, it's Kanji Needs Coffee, a friend of mine. Check out his channel. We did the Fusion Challenge over there recently. It's awesome. He actually did a whole video about what he's saying right here with his theory that Lapis and Lazuli, who are numbers 17 and 18, along with other failed artificial humans, were actually kidnapped by Dr. Gero during King Piccolo's legislation of all crime, which is, you know, when King Piccolo took over as king of the world, making it as the perfect chance for him to kidnap and commit atrocities without garnering more attention. And it lines up with his spy bugs watching Goku after the fight with the 22nd tournament. So yeah, really interesting theory. He breaks it down in one of his videos. I would definitely check that out. Check his channel out. He makes some great stuff, and I could see it fitting into the narrative. We don't know when he did that, so maybe it happened back then. He was working on them for a while. Kind of ties into my idea about why Goku sparing Dr. Gero was good, because the fact that they could have kicked down the door to the base in order to wipe him out like Bulma suggested, and then the androids are all there and they just immediately kill Goku and everyone because that was a stupid plan. But hindsight, Mike, yeah, Captain Hindsight from South Park. Well, how strong was he, really? That's my next versus battle, right? Could he beat Goku? Goku's on his Z clothing, the same pal as Daishinkan. GT, Goku's colors, same pal as Zeno. Take whatever you will. Yeah, neither of those characters were thought of until afterward. Why didn't the Z Fighters wish the heart virus away? Because I have a video about that. Well, because, you know, it was beyond Shenron's power. Otherwise, they would have done it. I mean, the thing is, like, in the original story, I doubt that anyone had any idea this virus was going to be so bad that it would kill Goku. They probably thought that he would power through it, and then when he didn't, it was like, oh, well, I guess we're boned. But then Trunks gave him a medication. So there was no real reason for them to wish it away. It would be a waste of a wish, especially since, you know, back then, there was only one wish on the Dragon Balls, and you want to have those things ready just in case some random villain shows up from space and kills everybody again. Frieza killed Goku on Namek in the anime continuity. Oh, so this idea, and that he was buried and coincidentally popped up after the wish to make... No. So Goku never died in the anime or in the manga. This is a big fan theory people had for years, but the Dragon Balls could not have wished him back again. This was a big plot point all throughout the arc. And again, like, you know, maybe he was unconscious. Maybe he was just like struggling to get back up because Frieza hit him good. He got the wind knocked out of him, you know, but yeah, I don't think that's ever said that he was killed or really even implied. Like he was out for a little bit. They couldn't sense his energy, but you know, I mean, that could mean that he was unconscious or something along those lines. He got back up and he was definitely hurt, like in terms of visible damage being done to him, but not enough to not finish the battle. And yeah, you could say, oh, it lends credibility to the idea, but I don't really align with that. It is impossible that in 3 years training together in the time chamber, Goku and Vegeta... Oh, boy. I think that it's impossible if all you think about is a 3-letter word and you can't get your mind out of the gutter. He has a bunch of theories, so I'm only going to look at the first one. The Goku's heart virus originated from a yard rat when he was training there for a short period of time. A lot of people have this fan theory, and I discussed this in another video you guys cannot see in the top right because I ran out of cards, but on my channel, where the heart virus come from. I'm probably gonna do another video because nobody seems to have watched that video or realized that I've already mentioned this on the channel because they keep commenting it. The fact of the matter is that there is zero evidence at all that the heart virus came from yard rat. It doesn't make any sense. It's implied that it was a epidemic that affected the world in the future, and that they made a heart virus medication well after Goku had died, and probably before they even came up with the concept of time travel from Bulma. So it was never said that she made it so they can give it to Goku and so on and so forth. At the same time, it's like, I don't think that it came from Yardrat. I think that a lot of fans are like, it makes perfect sense, but it's like, where's the evidence? There isn't any. I think it's interesting, but I don't think it's true. You can gauge Frieza Force members' power level and rank based on the color of their shoulder pads. So this is interesting, like the lower levels, white and gray, dark brown, average soldier, yellow elites, and then light brown in their power levels. Really interesting theory. Universe 12 guys timeline, the Zeno characters come from, Zeno Trunks, and so on. Hey, I mean, you never know, I guess. I mean, we don't know when it really happened. Could have been millions of years ago, and everything's totally different in that timeline. They referenced it once just so they give Zamasu a BS reason to get his own time machine, and then nothing ever came about it again because it was, well, the Future Trunks arc. Broly power increasing without limit. Yeah, I've done videos about that guy with my same name, Mike. So why Broly isn't that strong? Check it out. It's not true, as far as I'm concerned. It's not true. We made it up, as Riker said. Oop will be the next God of Destruction. I don't think so. As the only character born with God Ki, well, you know, aside from the gods. I still hate that idea. Oh, oops, you know, Kid Buu actually somehow got the God Ki from the Fat Supreme Kai, and then Oob inherited it. It's like, that's not how God Ki works, or Buu's absorption. He's literally supposed to be like pure Buu again. Why would he have the key from the god that is inside of Fat Buu? It doesn't make any sense, but that's Toyotaro and his writing for you. My personal theory is that part of Gohan's beast form comes from whenever Chi-Chi's red aura is. Oh, the Kaioken type of thing. I don't think so. I mean, it's kind of funny to think about, but yeah, I think that was just a joke scene. Again, it's not something that really fits into the narrative. And there's a lot of others, so I'll finish it off with this one. The Tail Saiyans had prevented them from going Super Saiyan, and that the Super Saiyan of Legend had the tail removed beforehand, probably in battle. And that depiction in the anime was a great ape, but I think that's a product of Legend being warped as it got passed down. And so again, tying into the Tails idea, where it's kind of the idea that, you know, everything is essentially, you know, tail related with regard to different forms and stuff. Again, I think a lot of fans place way too much precedent on that instead of, well, you know, the main narrative in Toriyama. But all right, guys, what do you think? What is the biggest fan theory in the Dragon Ball franchise? Also, what do you think of these different theories? Let me know your own thoughts down below. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe, and stick around, because there's a lot more to come in the future.
Y'all knew about the subscribe